Hello, everyone. Gabriel Harbour here. I'm the CEO of StormChaserCoaching.com, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about the video you're about to watch. StormChaserCoaching.com is a website dedicated to helping people of all skill levels become better and safer storm chasers. And this is a mini version of our Chase and Explain episodes, where our coaches take you through their entire chasing process from forecast to chase to debriefing session. Coach Max Olson was kind enough to let us use this footage to bring a mini version of the episodes to you. So if you like what you see, then once you're finished watching, head over to stormchasercoaching.com and check out the Chaser Academy. There's also tons of free stuff over there for you, like ebooks, a free community where we have people posting every day, a podcast feed, all that good stuff. You can also click the link in the description below to be taken right there as well. Thank you all very much for watching, and I hope you enjoy the episode.
Various NAM/RAP forecast soundings strongly favor intense supercells capable of large to very large hail and potentially multiple strong to intense tornadoes this evening as effective SRH rapidly increases in tandem with the southerly low-level jet, strengthening to 50 to 65 knots.
Nice.
Wow.
Perfect. Let's get it.
March 14th and March 15th were pretty highly advertised severe weather days. The week leading up to the event, we'd been watching this trough on the models, and it looked favorable. It looked like there would be severe weather both days, but would they both be chase days? We had just-in-time moisture. Would the moisture make it far enough north to have tornadic storms, or would this just be, moisture-starved supercells producing more wind and hail threats? It seemed to me like the 15th was what most people were putting emphasis on because the moisture would be there further south, good flow, really impressive photographs, but I really didn't want to discount the 14th. So leading up to the event, I was planning on chasing both, and as we got to, a few days to a day before the 14th, models started to show a little bit more moisture, but they were still going back and forth depending on which model you looked at. Some didn't even get 60 dews up to, past I-40. By the evening of the 13th, I was pretty convinced that the following day was going to be a legit chase. Enough models were showing adequate moisture return. As I said earlier, the trough orientation was very favorable. It seemed like we would have discrete supercells, and the convective allowing models really showed that, especially the HER was painting a pretty impressive picture with numerous isolated supercells from central Missouri down to northern Arkansas. I really thought that we should treat the day like a legitimate chase because a lot of people were putting so much emphasis on the following day. And while I agreed to some extent, I did see some classic Dixie issues that could potentially arise. And it was going to be tricky because the March 14th event looked like it would be more of an evening/overnight threat. And then you would pretty much have to haul all the way down from, southeast Missouri to northern or central or even southern Mississippi. So it was going to be a grind. There was not going to be much sleep. But I really didn't want to discount the 14th. This is a voice message that I sent to fellow storm chaser Aaron Rigsby the evening of the 13th in regards to kind of my thoughts about the following day's setup.
Yeah, exactly. That'll get it done 100%. I think people are going to be surprised at how many decent tornadoes there might be tomorrow. Because everybody's talking about Saturday. And while I agree, there's crazy parameter space and it looks good, there's already some of the classic Dixie fuck up factors starting to go into it. Right now on the HER, it shows a lot more convection than it did in the previous run, which of course will go back and forth, but it's that's one of the things that can ruin a day or at least really suppress a warm sector much further south. And it's we can't put all our eggs in one basket. We need to chase tomorrow legitimately with, I think there's going to be some decent tornadoes tomorrow if this is the way it evolves.
On the morning of March 14th, we left Norman, Oklahoma, and headed towards an initial target of the Springfield area. I did think that because of the orientation of the storms, kind of more northwest to southeast, that we would have the ability to kind of pick off supercell, play down the line. It seemed like there might be a chance at a couple daytime tornadoes.
Okay, the time is 4:30. We're in south central Missouri, and a tornado watch has just been issued with pretty high probabilities. Storms have fired off to our west, but they're still kind of in a moisture-starved environment. Dew points are just barely starting to get into the 50s here, so we are definitely going to have to wait for these to get a little further east. We're hoping for a potential storm close to, sunset, but this is probably going to be a mostly overnight event at this point.
But I wanted to at least give the daytime play a shot. So we got to Springfield, assessed some data, went to the Buc-ee's, and then continued up Interstate 44 and stopped in Lebanon. Now, once we got to Lebanon, that's pretty much where we sat for the remainder of the afternoon and watched storms start to evolve in western Missouri and just kind of waited for them to get their act together.
It's going to be, rolling right up to us, but I also would agree.
At some point here,
we're either going to need to go northeast or southeast.
Yeah.
So we could either go northeast and stay on 44, which is going to give us obviously our best options for viewing and for keeping up with the storms, given their 65-mile-an-hour storm motion right now. But down south, we obviously have better moisture along the Arkansas border there.
61 now, right at the border.
Okay, so 61-degree dews right on the border. That's the fuel that these storms really need to kind of be able to balance that 100-knot upper-level jet there, because right now, all the storms are just getting sheared apart. Every time it gets like an established tower, it just seems to get shredded, and then another one goes up behind it, and it just can't really find that balance. But once we get into that richer surface moisture, I do think that we'll find a better balance, and hopefully we'll have surface-based supercells here within the next hour. All right, so we are currently located just to the west of Plato, Missouri, waiting for this line of supercells to head our direction. All day, it's kind of been a little bit off balance between the outflow and the inflow, but this storm right here is at the lead of the wave, and it's really catching our attention. This one to the north was briefly tornado warned, still is, but it looks like it's gone mostly outflow dominant. However, this storm right here is starting to really show a nice balance between inflow and outflow, really strong reflectivity core, strong updraft, and lots of convergence there just to the northeast of Sparta. I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 15 minutes or so that we see a tornado warning on this, and we just have to sit pretty and watch as it tracks right up towards our location.
By evening, we finally had a target storm. We left Lebanon and dropped south to get in line for a supercell that was developing west of Mansfield, Missouri. The storm had a good look on radar. It seemed like it would eventually become tornadic. But the problem with days like March 14th is with the immense amount of flow, these storms are moving at 45, 50 miles per hour. And in this type of terrain, while it's not the worst, it is very hilly. There are trees and the roads are very windy. So it's hard to keep up with a storm. You kind of just have one shot. And so we tried to play upstream as much as possible to give these storms ample opportunity to mature and become tornadic. And then once they were tornadic, we would try and position ourselves in line. That's exactly what we did. With this storm, our timing was a little bit off. We played a little too far upstream and it became tornadic to our southwest. We could see the updraft, but we couldn't see the base from where we were sitting. So we pretty much just had to stay there because there was no way to really maneuver down there in time. And it produced a tornado to our southwest. It basically cycled right as it got to us, and we did have some dramatic motion with a new cycle developing near us, but unfortunately it just didn't quite work out. So right as that storm went past us, it was gone. There was no thought of keeping up with it. The play was to start heading south and east and get in line for the next storm. And we dropped down to Mountain Grove, Missouri in the southern portion of the state on Highway 60, and then continued southeast from there. We got to Willow Springs, and that's where we had kind of a tough decision to make because there was the supercell coming out of northern Arkansas. Looked very impressive. I believe even had some tornado reports by that point, and it looked to be heading towards the West Plains vicinity. And we had a highway that went down towards West Plains from the Willow Springs area, but we weren't sure if we were going to make it in time. And when it's, very fast storm speeds, after dark, windy roads, difficult terrain, it's not worth it to take those kind of risks, in my opinion. So we opted to not go down and try and thread the needle to West Plains, where there was an impressive tornado that a few other fellow storm chasers captured. We stayed on Highway 60, continued east towards Birch Tree, and even further east, I believe Fremont is where we stopped, and allowed the supercell to approach us. And it had multiple reports of tornadoes. It was approaching us. It looked very impressive on radar, and there was a tornado ongoing as it passed just to our west.
It's tracking almost at us.
This is a great view.
Yeah, as good as we're gonna get, for sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna be able, I almost swear I just saw the base in the camera. I believe we went just east of Fremont, allowed it to pass just to our west, but the tornado was very rain wrapped at that point. So we did not get a very good view. We could see the area of circulation, but we cannot see a definitive tornado necessarily. The play was to have one shot with the storms and then move on to the next one. There was no attempt to try and keep up with it. So once that storm crossed Highway 60, we continued on the highway down towards Poplar Bluff, where another supercell was emerging out of Arkansas. We went down Highway 67 about 10 or so miles southwest of Poplar Bluff and waited for this storm. Once we got a view of the base, we could see a cone feature emerging. After analysis, we realized that this was the end of the long track EF4 tornado that had been causing a lot of damage throughout portions of northeast Arkansas into Missouri. This was likely the end of that tornado. It was just a cone to kind of bowl feature suspended, and it started getting wrapped into a new circulation that was developing to its northeast. And we watched as that evolution occurred and a tornado then ensued. We had basically a big bowl with power flashes and debris underneath, and then very briefly saw it condense into a fat stovepipe before it got to the tree line and was no longer visible. So we went back north on Highway 67 and tried to get another view of it as the tornado was entering Poplar Bluff, and we just really couldn't. It was very chaotic. We got in the RFD and decided to just turn around because we didn't, want to mess around with that type of situation at night. So we went back south, and lo and behold, there's more supercells that are in Arkansas approaching southeast Missouri. I've been chasing for 18 years. I've chased a lot of nighttime events. I've never chased one like this, though, where you have so many isolated supercells continuously producing tornadoes. Usually at this point of the night, we're talking approaching midnight. Usually these storms are starting to either grow upscale or they're being impacted by the cap or something, but this was just a unique scenario where you had a tornadic environment, isolated supercells persisting well into the overnight. So we went ahead and got in line for the next supercell. We dropped southeast from the Poplar Bluff area towards a town called Kennet, Missouri. Now, a bit of a funny backstory here. We had a chase partner with us who really had to use the restroom. So once we got into Kennet, we had a little bit of breathing room with the storm. It was still maybe 25 miles to our southwest. The sirens were already sounding in town. The winds were absolutely ripping. The surface winds were so incredible with this impressive low. They were just blowing sand and dust everywhere. And our chase partner ran into the bathroom at the Casey's, and we started fueling up. Tornado sirens are going off. The Casey's starts to shut down. They start to shut off the pumps, they start to shut down their inside, and they start locking the door as our friend is still inside the bathroom. And we had to run over and tell them, no, don't. There's somebody in there. Thankfully, they were able to let him out, and the employees were presumably able to get to a safe spot as this storm approached town. We went east on Highway 84 and watched as the storm approached town and very quickly started developing a new circulation. We could see that process unfold.
I just able to see something in the lightning.
It's going to be due north right now.
Yep. Oh, what was that?
That looked like a right-hand edge, maybe.
Oh yeah, it looks like a stovepipe or something.
Right where that lightning is, right?
Just to the right of that light where that lightning was.
Yeah,
Look at that.
Yeah. That might be a big dusty tornado right in there.
And once again had a cone type bowl funnel develop, and then power flashes started popping off all throughout town. It seemed to be getting a direct impact. We allowed the storm to get relatively close because that area of Missouri, the Delta region, is very flat and open. The roads start to become a bit more, straight and narrow as opposed to the windy roads we had been encountering further northwest in Missouri. So we were able to let this storm get a little closer to us, and we were actually able to reposition going to Hayti, Missouri, and then up Highway 55 or Interstate 55 for a secondary intercept north of Hayti. And by this point, I believe the main tornado that impacted Kennet had lifted, but this other small little circulation developed, and we actually had this kind of photogenic narrow funnel come down, and apparently was a brief tornado. But after the storm crossed Interstate 55, it was time to call the chase. It was probably 1:30 a.m. or maybe even later than that. As I said earlier, we still had to drive to Mississippi for the following day's chase. So we called it. We started heading down towards Tupelo is where we were going to get a hotel for literally 3 hours. We would arrive at 5 a.m. We wanted to be up by 8 a.m. at the latest. And ironically, as we got to Tupelo, a supercell had developed and went tornado warn just to the west of town. And it was almost funny at that point just how much of an overperforming day this was and how we almost seemingly couldn't avoid tornadic supercells all throughout the night. But thankfully, I don't believe that storm actually produced, or if it did, it was very brief. And we ended up getting a few hours of sleep and then continued onward the following day, March 15th, which was, of course, the high risk event. We did not have nearly as much success on that day. It seemed like we were just behind the 8 ball the entire time. We got to the area just northeast of Taylorsville where there had just been a tornado, and we got in line for those supercells. And it seemed like once they got past that, they were having issues maintaining themselves. So a lot of supercells, but no tornadoes on that chase. So in our case, March 14th was the big day.